And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Unger and James Velez Mitchell and Nick Adams. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie raising some eyebrows today while giving an unofficial campaign speech in New Hampshire.
Let's ask ourselves an honest question. Do we really believe that the wealthiest Americans need to take from younger, hardworking Americans to receive what, for most of them, is a modest monthly Social Security check? Yeah, I say no.
Okay, so what do you propose, Governor?
I propose a modest means test that only affects those with non-Social Security income of over $80,000 a year and phases out Social Security payments entirely for those that have $200,000 a year in retirement income.
Okay, so didn't those same people pay into the system like everyone else? Here's more from the governor.
Problems won't get solved if we wait for others to solve them, or if we're afraid to confront what we know to be true. Today, we know this. Our entitlement system is out of control. Its growth is not sustainable, and inaction threatens the economic health of every generation that will follow us.
Sounds like a show on Netflix that I watched. More on that in a moment. Joining us now from Atlanta is Matt Towery. He's the author of Paranoid Nation, the real story of the 2000 fight for the presidency. He also heads the polling and political information firm Insider Advantage. Matt, great to have you with us. Appreciate it.
Happy to be with you.
So Governor Christie has been saying he is a, quote, outside the beltway kind of guy, telling it like it is. The candor, I live in New Jersey, I know all about it. Going right to the third rail of politics, Social Security, is quite a statement.
Well, it's great if you get the nomination and you're trying to appeal and fight against this class warfare that we're going to see in the next election cycle. But it may not be so great winning a Republican nomination. I find it really difficult to see where this will really get many folks who are senior voters who can't really make the distinction that they won't be affected, excited about voting for Chris Christie. This is just, I think, a touchdown bomb he's throwing very early into a race that he's barely in right now.
To your point, I remember George Bush, after he won the 2004 election, said that he had some political clout, he was going to use it, and he tried to reform Social Security, a certain degree of privatization, and privatizing, that's the word I was looking for. And it didn't work out for him too well politically. So I'm surprised Christie, to your point, went down this road.
Well, I'm never surprised anything Christie does. It sounds like I'm not a fan. I think he's entertaining. I think he's a smart man. Do I think he really is ready for a presidential race in which we're seeing candidates pop up left and right who are pretty savvy about winning these early states and then coming into the South and Florida and sealing the deal? No, I just don't see it right now. He'll have to convince me. This is an interesting thing. He's certainly telling the truth. We all know at some point some changes have to be made. But this is not the way you launch a presidential campaign, if indeed there is to be one, and a battle to try to win the Republican nomination.
So Matt, it's Rick Unger. So basically what I hear you saying is really good on the substance, really bad on the politics.
Yeah, which is not unusual for him. I mean, sometimes he's really bad on both. I mean, he'll make some off the record comments or off the cuff comments that just can't be explained. But one thing he is trying to do is creating this image that he will take on any issue. He's not afraid. He's willing to, cross boundaries and take on the tough matters. And that sounds really good. The problem is when you get to Iowa, New Hampshire, get yourself down to South Carolina, then have to fight out in Florida. By that time, whatever tough message you have, it's going to be peeled back substantially. And for Chris Christie, that's going to be the big problem. Is he willing to make those changes as he goes through a campaign?
And Matt Towery joining us from Atlanta. Thanks so much for your input. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so Christie's poll numbers have been in the tank with Republican voters, taking on Social Security, maybe not going to get him too much more support, or will it? And is this a possible endgame for Christie, a VP nod, perhaps? Nick, obviously Chris Christie isn't involved in Australian politics in any way, shape, or form, but he leaves an impression with the Republican base, good or bad. Your thoughts on Chris Christie overall?
Joe, I like him. I think he's great. I think he's out there and he's putting the case. I think he's bold, he's brash, and I'm a fan of his style. And I think that Americans in the coming months, if he does jump into the race, are going to be not only entertained, but are going to be confronted to think about things that perhaps they haven't thought about before. And this is the latest example of that. I can think of putting it this way. In Australia, we have free healthcare. That's free healthcare for everybody, even if they are a multimillionaire. why should we be paying for people that are multimillionaires when they can easily be part of a private system? And I think that the same kind of analogy can be used here in this instance.
I just have to jump in because, with all due respect, you're a lovely man, but I couldn't disagree with you more. I think Christie shot himself in the foot, and I'm so happy because I think this is going to enrage people. He's essentially equating Social Security with welfare. We pay into the Social Security system. People are counting on it, and people's fortunes can change on a dime. And for him to have the audacity to say that, well, rich people, and then say, then jump in with above $80,000, which we know in this society today, depending on what coast you live or what city you live in, doesn't classify as a rich person. This is outrageous, and there are so many other places to cut. Do not touch Social Security.
I always wonder in these situations where politicians get certain ideas from. Maybe you see it as bold, maybe you see it as foolish. Then I realize that most politicians watch a certain show on Netflix and maybe trying to emulate a certain president on that show. Roll it.
We've been crippled by Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, by welfare, by entitlements. And that is the root of the problem. Entitlements. Let me be clear. You are entitled to nothing. You are entitled to nothing.
You are entitled to nothing. Jane, quickly.
I have to jump in. Frank Underwood is a murderer. He threw a woman in front of a train.
No, don't spoil it. Come on.
That's
never proven.
That's a couple of
Okay,
scenes.
whatever chance Christie might still have of getting the nomination, I'm about to ruin, I'm afraid. Because I agree with him 190%. I've been saying this for years. His idea needs a little bit of refining, particularly on the lower ends. I would take that $80,000 and make it adjustable based on where you live, because cost of living can change in different places. But he's right. There are people, and I will tell you, I include myself in this, who should not be getting Social Security.
Then give it to charity.
It's an insurance policy. I buy insurance on my home in case it burns down. I'm not rooting for it to burn down. I don't want the money. I bought Social Security insurance in case my life turned out differently. Nobody knows how it's going to turn out. So I shouldn't be getting it.
Do you think a lot of folks your age agree with you to a certain extent?
I think the ones who don't need it do. There are some who don't, but you know what? You don't need it.
Interesting. I want to have this discussion again, absolutely. So coming up next, the president has removed Cuba from the state terror list, but many Cubans are angry. This is the Daily Wrap only on Newsmax.